Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is the brand new the very first edition of 1031 Exchange Deal Structure. We're going to go over with my good friend, Mr. James Callejas with 1031 IPX Exchange. He's going to walk us through one or more deals per episode of exactly how to do a 1031 exchange, what is that, and how you can save some money. So, James, my dear friend, how are you? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing great. Happy to be here today. And let's just get rolling. Let's get right into it.
Let's go. You and your team do over 200 deals a month, and I know you've selected one very special one for us today to kind of talk about what is a 1031 exchange, what stood out in this deal, and what should people kind of keep their eyes open. So, James, the floor is yours. What happened and what should people learn?
Well, this one's in the current mix, and I thought I'd talk about the meeting that I had earlier today. So I met with the grandson and the grandmother, and the grandson was there just to make sure the grandmother understood everything. And here's the story. She bought a property in Livermore in 1971 for $19,000. And she had lived in it in the 70s, but it had been a rental since the 80s. And now that same property is going to be sold for about $1.7 million. And they came to me just to find out what a 1031 exchange was and if they could just take the money and run and pay the 15%. And at the beginning of the conversation, I said, well, first off, it's not 15%. You're probably going to lose more like 30 to 35%. And she says, well, I'm retired and I don't have that much income. But I told her, but you have a significant gain. And when you have significant gains, you're going to get hit in a bunch of different ways. And they said, well, what can we do? I said, you can do a 1031 exchange. And I noticed you brought your grandson with you today. And what's the reason? And she says, well, because I don't trust my children, but I trust my grandson. And what I want to do is get something set up for him in the future. And I asked him, what were you looking to do? And he said, well, we're looking to buy something in Southern California. And I said, are you going to live in the property? And he says, I'd like to live in the property. I said, well, you can't do that. Livermore is an investment property. If you're going to buy something in Southern California, it has to be investment property. And you want to use all the money to be in a position to pay zero in capital gains tax. So you're selling something in Livermore for over $1.5 million. What were you looking to buy in Southern California? And he said, well, I'm looking to buy something that we can afford for the same dollar amount, and I want to move into the property. I said, you can't do that initially. What you can do is buy it initially as investment property. You live in Southern California right now. Why don't you manage that real estate asset for your grandmother? And eventually you can move into that property and you can preserve all the equity through the 1031 exchange, because if she were just to sell the Livermore property and take the money, she's going to lose because the basis is almost zero, probably about 30 to 33% of every dollar that comes out of that transaction. So what would have been 1.5, $1.6 million is now going to be more like 950 to $1 million. But what you can do is sell Livermore, do a 1031 exchange, buy the replacement property in Southern California, rent it to people maybe you trust or know out there for that 1 to 2 year time frame, depending upon what your tax advisor recommends. And then you can move into the property. And it looks like you're going to eventually inherit the property. And the beauty is that when you do get that property, you will get a step up in basis. So those gains will be forgiven. And when you eventually sell the asset, if you sell it shortly afterwards, there won't be a gain to realize. Or if you sell it in the future, the basis will be the current value of when you inherit the property. They were thrilled. They're excited to get this going. The property is going to go on the market in Livermore in about a week. It'll sell because there just isn't that much inventory in that area. And they've already started combing Southern California to make sure that things work. I explained the time frames. I explained how it could work, but we did a couple of things here. We preserved the equity. That was the number one for grandma, because she wants to make sure that grandson will get this property, will get this money, will get everything that he's looking for in the future to come. We also solved a problem of a living situation for the grandson, where he's going to watch it first and stay where he's currently at renting, then move into it eventually, and then eventually inherit the asset and either sell it at that point or continue to own that property if he likes where he lives. And what we call is an end game solution. Grandma preserved the equity to the next property, found a place for the grandson to live, and estate planned it so that when the grandson eventually inherits the asset, there will be no capital gain to realize if he sells it right afterwards. Or if he keeps it, he will have a step up in basis and less gains to realize, and he will be protected by the primary residence exclusion when he eventually sells it. So even when there are gains, he'll be able to protect, if not all of it, a portion of it. So, Greg, that's the story for today. Doing a 1031 exchange for estate planning purposes, preserving the equity, and to really set somebody up for life. Because in 1031 land, we buy till we die because that step up in basis.
Okay, so you just went through that at literal turbo speed. I love it. You know what you talk about. That's why I have you on. That's why you're my good friend and my confidant when it comes to 1031 exchanges, and the only man I will ever refer out. Let's talk about timeframes really quickly. You said you went over the timeframes. For those who have never heard or would like to learn again, exactly in 2023, what is a time frame both on, well, just walk us through the time frame of a 1031 exchange.
So first off, I think when anybody's considering a 1031 exchange, you want to have a brief conversation with someone like myself to determine whether or not the property qualifies. I had that meeting with them today just to confirm that. Who's the owner? Is that owner on title? Is it investment property? How long has it been investment property? It's been a rental for 40 years. She's been the owner for 40 years. It qualifies for a 1031 exchange. And I said, this is perfect. When are you looking to list the property? And she said, next week. And I said, what's very important is that in a 1031 exchange, you have to find replacement property in a short window. So here's what I recommend. You're going to list the property for sale. Eventually, you're going to accept an offer. Then you're going to open up escrow. We need to get into the mix in terms of legal documents at that point. And it definitely must be in place, our paperwork that is, prior to the close of escrow. Because at the close of escrow, the clock starts ticking. You will have 45 calendar days to identify in writing exactly what you're going to purchase in the 1031 exchange. Then from day 45, you'll have an additional 135 days to close on whatever you identify. And as long as you can use all the money and buy of equal or greater value, you'll be in a position to pay zero in capital gains tax. But again, I reiterated to them that prior to listing the property, you want to have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. Now, I know they want to buy Southern California property, so I recommended, okay, grandson, you live down there. When you're back in Southern California, I want you to get a list of areas that you would consider, get the price range that you're looking at because the property hasn't sold, so you just have a range, and then start looking for properties and have ideas of what inventory is available because you need to strike quickly. There's no extensions in most scenarios on the 45 or 180-day time frame. So once Livermore goes into contract, the clock kind of started ticking, right? You might have a 30-day escrow, and the 45-day window will start shortly afterwards. So it's all about timing. Have a plan in place prior to selling the property. Start executing that plan once the property is entered into contract, or even before. Somebody will accept a contingent offer, or if you're buying new construction that's going to be completed within your 180 days, because you have 45 and 180 days. And if you don't meet those requirements, your exchange will fail.
Well, I got to tell you, boys and girls, if you've never heard of a 1031 exchange, I want you to go back and listen to this show at half speed, because what he just told you is worth its weight in gold, and he hasn't even scratched the surface yet. So we've talked about time frames really quickly. We've talked about kind of, well, actually, we haven't really talked about that in depth yet. Exactly what can you exchange? When you say investment, is that just real estate, or can you exchange almost anything?
So the Internal Revenue Code 1031 currently only applies to real property. In the past, there were some other types of exchanges that you could do, but right now it is just real property. And a lot of people get confused by this because when people hear, oh, she's selling a single family home in Livermore looking to do a 1031 exchange, what can she buy as replacement property? Most people think, oh, it's got to be a single family home or it's got to be a piece of residential property. Here's how it works. You can ask yourself 3 questions, and if the answer is yes to all 3, it works. Number 1, is the property real property? Number 2, is the property in the United States? And number 3, is the property used for a business or investment purpose? If you can answer yes to all 3, it qualifies on both the sale and the purchase side. I mentioned earlier that the grandson wanted to move into the property and have it as his primary residence at some point in the future. meaning there are ways to convert the investment property to a second home or a primary residence. Those properties, those types of properties don't qualify for 1031 exchange. However, there are ways to convert it after treating it as investment property for a period of time that your tax advisor is comfortable with. So to answer Greg's question, what does and what doesn't work and what qualifies for the 1031 exchange, it's only real property in the United States used for a business or investment purpose. So if I sell in California, I can't go buy in Rome. If I sell in Rome, I can't buy in California. Domestic for domestic, international for international, and it must be real property.
Okay, well, that clarified that very quickly. Boys and girls, we are going to be coming back. This is our first show of doing this. We love this structure. We think everybody needs to learn about this because every one of the deals that James and his team does, they're all uniquely different. And I want you to watch, listen, share this with everybody around. I want you to reach out to James at IPX 1031 Exchange. And if you guys want to, DM me. I'll give you his contact information. If you guys have something or a question or something to exchange with a client, he is a phenomenal resource. His team is amazing, and we're going to come back and do more of these shows. We're going to do at least, probably, if James has the time, about one a week. That'll be 4 shows. So if you guys have any questions or ideas for a show or thoughts about if there's something they could exchange or might not exchange, ask us in the comments and we will get back, or we will do a show about that for you. So James, in wrapping this thing up, because I know you have another meeting coming up here in about 4 minutes, give us 1 minute takeaway of the way this deal started, how it was structured, and then the takeaways that people can maybe put into their own business careers. All right, buddy. 60 seconds starts now.
Okay, let's start with the takeaway first. Biggest misconception of the 1031 exchange is that people do it to avoid paying taxes. That is not the case. If you want to defer taxes, avoid taxes, not pay taxes, you don't sell your real estate. You do it to get your situation into a better spot, to buy a superior piece of investment property. You do a 1031 exchange to make dreams come true. What was the dream for grandma today? To get grandson the property that he eventually wants to live in and preserve all that equity. When you know the path, when you have somebody guiding you through the path, you can achieve this goal. Not to defer tax and avoid the taxes. Great benefit, but that wasn't the reason why this person did the 1031 exchange. Get out of Livermore, buy Southern California, preserve equity, make grandson happy. There's always a reason why someone wants to do a 1031 exchange that is not related to the taxes. When you know that reason, I can help you find a solution and we can make that dream come true.
Dang, that was awesome. All right, boys and girls, there it is. This is James Callejas, IPX 1031 Exchange here in Northern California. That's where I sit. That's where he sits. But he operates in the entire country, every single state. So if you guys are looking anywhere in the United States for an expert in 1031 exchanges, this is our first deal structure on 1031 exchanges. So reach out to me, reach out to James. James, where can people reach out to you directly?
Call me at 415-640-0794. That's my cell phone, so you can text me or call me. Or my email address is James, my last name, Callejas, which is spelled Callejas at IPX1031.com. Or just DM Greg and he'll give you all the info.
You know what? If you guys are listening to this in your car or anywhere else you're driving, don't bother. Just DM me. I'll get everything over to you. James, you are a legend amongst men, amongst real estate agents. We are honored to be in your presence. Thank you for your time. We will be back next week, ladies and gentlemen, for our next story, our next deal structure of 1031 and investment strategies. Until then, see you guys on the flip side. Bye.